and welcome to Streaming Media West. My name's Mark Hyatt, and I'm a director at the Global Online Video Association, or GOVA, and we are the industry trade group for the multi-channel network community, as well as some other companies and organizations that ask us to represent their interests. And if you don't know about the multi-channel network industry, I'll give you a little primer on that. It's basically an industry that Google created to help produce more professional content for YouTube. Those are my words, not Google's words, but that's the short answer of what multi-channel network industry is. But it has become now a very robust and growing industry of vertically integrated entertainment companies. And a key part of these vertically integrated entertainment companies' value that they bring to the creators that they represent, and these are people who make primarily videos for places like YouTube, Vine, starting to see Snapchat, you fill in the blank. Anybody who has video and people are making it either professionally or semi-professionally, that's what multi-channel networks are trying to serve. One of the key areas that multi-channel networks add value is by helping creators navigate the landscape of these social platforms. And those platforms in particular that we'll focus a lot on today will be all the familiar names: YouTube, Instagram, Vine. There isn't a lot of information on Facebook, but hopefully we'll get to some stories about that. But Facebook is certainly becoming a major force, and Snapchat, if anybody has a particular story about Snapchat. And so interacting with these platforms means that you need to understand that the normal rules of business, particularly with content and media, don't necessarily apply because these are technology companies and these are product-focused companies. And as such, they demand a certain level of aptitude and imagination that not a lot of content or media companies have had expertise in. The three gentlemen to my left all are going to, today are going to regale us with stories of both product and technological interactions with these social platforms that have led to arguably better relationships with the platforms. Because a constant refrain that I am hearing at GOVA, and I imagine some of you have heard, is we're trying to be a good partner with Facebook, but it seems like they don't care about us. Well, unless you're using your imagination with product development and technology, they don't care about you. And so this panel, we hope to shed some light and to take some questions and to hopefully have a couple of laughs. So I'm going to make a brief introduction to the gentleman to my left now. Alex is the CTO of Me Too Networks, and maybe Alex, you could tell us a little bit about your background and why you agreed to be on this panel.
Because you talked me into it.
Okay, very good.
I'm a technologist. I've been in technology business since early 90s, and I've been navigating my way as an entrepreneur. Had founded several companies and now leading the technology for Me Too Networks. Me Too is focused in Latino audience. So everything we do that is audience related is focused on Latino.
Next to Alex is Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn is the Chief Technology Officer of Collective Digital Studio. Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
I too am a technologist. I previously worked at Answers.com, being their software architect and a few other smattering tech companies, and then came to Collective Digital Studio 3 years ago to build a tech team and to be able to interact with the companies we were distributing content to, YouTube, and just like Mark mentioned. And so over the last 3 years, we've built up a team and built up a bunch of platforms, all to help our creators, which are kind of that big top 1%, the Epic Meal Times and Freddie W. and Logan Paul, which maybe none of you know about, but those kind of creators, to help them distribute to different platforms and to also help talk to these companies that we push the content to.
And the final gentleman on the left is Scott Paul. He's the VP of Product at Maker Studios. Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role.
All right, so I've been a technologist to a degree, but also just pretty much product developer and entrepreneur. I started a company with a partner about 3 years ago, and we were an app, and we needed downloads, and that turned into instead of the app, we learned how to acquire downloads using these influencers on these new media platforms, primarily Instagram at the time. And so we started, we became a marketing agency for Instagram that turned into then Vine, and then Snapchat, and then we were recently acquired by Maker Studios because they were very heavy in YouTube and doing that. They're a Disney company trying to, with roots in YouTube, but they needed to, now the world is multi-platform, not just multi-channel. And so they needed to have a team that had some proficiencies in the other new networks that were a little more mobile focused and just different platforms altogether. So now that's what I'm doing over there, is building products in their social division of Maker Studios.
So we're going to start off today by what a lot of people ask when they start interacting with these social platforms and they own media content is, do these platforms give you all the tools you need to be successful on them? And so in particular, for example, YouTube is very clear that they have a playbook, youtube.com/playbook, and they encourage everybody to read it. And that's all fine and dandy, but that does not tell the entire story. So asking that question, do the platforms right now, and you can either give a specific example of a particular instance with a platform where you've had an experience, or you can make a blanket statement, are the platforms being good partners when it comes to helping media companies be successful? Alex?
Definition of platform can vary. There are platforms like YouTube that I think they've been very generous into providing APIs, what set of information that can generally do a lot. So I think from the top of the list, YouTube is most generous. Rolling down, Facebook is providing decent information, and they're also evolving their platform rapidly as they're realizing video is an important media. Going all the way down to the Snapchats of the world, they're not providing as much information or any information with the partners, but I'm assuming that the trend is going to change.
Yeah, I would agree with that list. YouTube is certainly the gold standard, and down to whatever the new networks are that don't have anything. But you have to remember, these are tech companies, and they're judged by the rapid consumer growth, and we're kind of at the end of that trail. So you'll see things like Snapchat that just wants to get everything out there, and then eventually when they want to, make a little money or improve the content, then they have to go back and do these APIs. YouTube is the gold standard, but they've been out there for the longest, so they've had the most time to build the APIs, build the reporting, and also build teams that talk to companies like us. So I think everyone will get there, but right now some of these newer networks, it's not the goal yet. Their goal is to get as many people on as possible.
Yeah, I'd second that list in that identical order. Although you see Snapchat, making way for media companies to be discovered now, and there is some in-app streaming, of course, to these other channels. That's their interesting product right now. That's going pretty well for them. I think they all have divisions now that do work with media companies. They're pretty, like Vine's just started one that they're trying to reach out to their influencers and to other media companies, and Facebook was in the office last week. So they're really trying to listen and deal with companies like ours and others, but it isn't their technology companies first, and so it isn't something they do when they start up for a few years. It seems that it takes some time.
So when you say technology companies, I of course think of you're actually making a technology product, right? In this case, we're talking about video in particular, and video on the web is not a new technology. I mean, there might be some incremental improvements being made, right? So why is it that there is such a difficulty in, let's say, reporting, or has been difficulties in reporting on things like views or interactions with video content on major technology platforms like Instagram and Facebook, well, and YouTube, where you'll basically have inconsistencies. And I would think that a company like Google, in particular, would not be inconsistent. You know, they would want to have everything rolling along smoothly as possible. What do you think? Why do you think these challenges have occurred? And if you could, maybe talk about a specific example where you've had a challenge with one of the platforms.
I think video on the web is not new, but the different types of fraud we're seeing and the different types of metrics and what means a view and what is it, Facebook is 3 seconds on your feed as a view versus YouTube can give you watch minutes and trigger a view much later. So I think the standards are still being sorted out. I think figuring out the fraud issue is still very, very new, and all the bots viewing traffic. And so all of that kind of factors into this, murkiness and changes between the different platforms and what's a view here and what's a view there. They're all trying to figure it out. It's tricky, and there's just a lot of new variables. Video is not new, but new variables, apps, video and apps is still kind of in its early stages, and figuring all that out is the cause of that fluctuation.
Anything to add?
I don't think a lot of them don't want to give you too much, because I know in Snapchat particular, they want to control the ad cell and everything else directly. So they don't want to give you the view count. They don't even let you know how many followers you have. It is a black box nobody knows anything about, and that's why they charge $750,000 to do one little Snapchat campaign with them, because they hold all that information pretty close to heart. So.
Which allows them to not have to worry about video fraud too.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the past, when you guys first started at your respective organizations, I imagine part of the reason you were brought into these organizations was because other parts of management realized that in order to be successful on these platforms, there would need to be some kind of technology and product interaction that was not just taking a analytics API and being able to put a front end on it so you could see how many views you had in the last 24 hours. So if you could maybe relate to the audience here a particular challenge you had with one of the platforms, or opportunity that you had either a specific technological or product solution that was developed. And I don't know, Scott, could we start with you? I know that we previously talked about.
I think we're developing it right now. It's
Okay.
And so in our world, it's very hard to. So yeah, we're not analytics as much as we are content storytelling, and how do you do that at scale? I think all MCNs still deal with this. Most of these MCNs that have YouTube stars in their roster really just deal with the upper echelon of them, because it's very hard to scale. Even with all the technology we have, we only touch 1% of the people that maybe have signed up for our to be kind of represented by us. So it's very hard to work at scale with content that's changing. And so we're trying to find ways to rate content, rate creators, give them scores and stuff, and then find ways to bring them opportunities to work with brands and stuff. So we're building that technology, but I would say that it's kind of trying to grow out of this media agency kind of world into more of a technology company, and that's the MCNs are kind of built on this Google MCN model. A lot of them aren't very technology. They're not technology first. They have a lot of the LA media world kind of wrapped in them still, and so we're trying to kind of graduate from that at the moment.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. I would say the other side of that, one of the big challenges for us is not maybe in particular to each platforms, but getting all that information together into one spot has been a challenge. And then also delivering that information to creators in a way that's actionable is a constant challenge too. You know, you can show them a graph and they're going to go, okay. I mean, half of these people are 13-year-olds. So you got to give them actionable. You got to take all this information in and then give them things they can actually do on the platforms, because every platform is going to be different. A description on YouTube is a crappy description on Facebook. And so figuring out all those different actual platforms, getting all that information in, giving them clear direction for each individual platform is something that is both a technology challenge and a management challenge, and you know, it's just something that's constant. Every new network, you know, adds another network to have to monitor.
Alex?
Well, I think it started with YouTube because they provided monetization for both creators and MCNs. But that landscape is quickly changing. The YouTube is not the only sheriff in town. Facebook is quickly figuring out how to monetize audience and video, being the primary go-to media source right now. So that creates a very fast-changing landscape that requires us to quickly react and build for our audience and our customers, being the creators. And creators, their number one motivation is probably making revenue. So there are not that many platforms out there that can enable these shifts and changes. Hence, companies are moving more towards technology, folks like us, to build those solutions.
So recently, Google was very clear that they were looking to be more transparent with partners when it came to development on YouTube. In particular, changes that were made to their APIs was somewhat, in the past, my understanding was that it was somewhat of a black box where changes would come down and those could affect the way that, that partner companies receive the information and or was able to display the information, or numerous other effects. But YouTube is looking to be more open and communicate better. Do any of you have any examples of, on a technical or product side, of how communication with YouTube has changed over, let's say, the last 24 to 36 months? And if so, has it gotten better? And if it's gotten better, what are the effects on your businesses right now?
I'll start. I think YouTube folks, Google folks are amazing. I don't have that much of experience in terms of 24 months since I've only joined for last 10 months, but I can say that they're very generous and very upfront if you need them to up your quota. They just need a simple question answered, and they're very responsive. So I don't have any complaints about YouTube.
You touched on the big one, which is quota. The amount of things you can pull from YouTube in a given time period, they vary. But early on, it was very low, and that was a constant issue that they dealt with all the time. As I think their system matured, they've opened that up over the last couple of years significantly, and that's been a big help. And no question, that's been the biggest change.
I don't have a lot of experience with YouTube, but I have to imagine they're going to be more and more friendly with the competition coming out of a lot of Facebook properties and Twitter, even with some Periscope and all these other. They don't have that stronghold on video, and they're going to grow. You want to become more developer friendly. Well, those other ones are not there yet, and that could help them. But they've done this new YouTube Red thing, which you might talk about. I don't know a ton about it, but I know it's a lot of talk right now about what that product's going to be. How it's going to be received in the marketplace.
So to stay on YouTube, one of the experiences that I always, from my time of being in the MCN world, one of the things I found fascinating was that there was a language barrier between the the technologists and product people at Google and YouTube, and for the most part, the people at the MCNs. It was almost as though it was almost as though they were speaking two different languages. Now, obviously, if you're running the platform and all the things that are going on to make sure that the lights stay on the platform, that is a different task than how you interact with the platform. Has there been, besides communication, do you think YouTube has done any real changes to make it easier to, on a technology side, whether it's pulling the data out or maybe it's mass uploads? I'm not quite sure. Have they done anything to make it easier for the MCNs to interact with them on the technology side? And if so, that'd be great to give us some details.
I think that MCNs had very little technology prior to recently. So obviously, if Google is providing a bunch of technological APIs or information, they had no use for it. So but there have been other companies who have been developing around this just because of that void. But as we have started building the process of technology blocks for these companies, I think there's less barriers.
They've improved a lot of things about, like I said, getting data out. The biggest single example would easily be the Content ID system, though. I mean, their ability to match different chunks of videos so that we can, people uploading their own videos to different accounts and things like that is a big issue for the whole video platform in general. So being able to track those videos, being able to monetize in different countries or different ways, adding an API for that's probably been the biggest example of pushing data in, getting data out, and getting real actionable change. I mean, that's real revenue we can get from using that system, and that's huge. And I think it's so huge, and there's such the gold standard on that. This is why Facebook is kind of taking their sweet time, or it seems like they're taking their sweet time getting into this, because they want to make sure they have this system right, because people kind of expect this now. It's that important.
Again, I don't have much to say. I just know at Maker Studios, we do a lot of claiming, which is a big revenue generator for us. When users use Disney content, they can go out and claim it and get the AdSense off of that. And I know that's been improved a lot for the MCNs in the last little bit, if I'm not mistaken. I think that used to not be there as much.
Right. Yep.
So the concept of claiming intellectual property on the internet is not new. I mean, there's a company that many of you must have heard of in the past called Audible Magic that I think might have even licensed some of their technology to Google, particularly when the Viacom litigation was heating up a number of years ago. Do you think that the MCNs and maybe associated companies, I don't even know who associated companies would be, maybe a Zephyr, but maybe not. Do you think that responsibility should fall on the MCNs a little bit? And by that I mean, right now it seems pretty much you upload what you can upload to Content ID, right? It seems to me it's just the ability to track it, right?
Right. And Content ID and that idea of fingerprinting and finding things isn't necessarily new, but at the scale that YouTube is doing it is new. And being able to automate that and be able to push things in and track different chunks of video. People will take Vine videos, which are 10 seconds in length, they'll stitch them together, upload them to YouTube. Maybe 5 out of the 7 they put in there are our channels, and our creators want that content. Being able to match chunks of videos, which Vine's actually a bad example, but being able to find things in those videos so we can get paid on just the 30-second swatch that is ours is new, and that's a big difference, I think.
So now let's talk about your guys' mandates without giving any trade secrets away, and what you view your roles are now as product leads and technology leads. and where we are now. We've passed the basic point. The industry is maturing. The platforms, yes, Facebook is new, but still, like Mike just mentioned, I think that Facebook has just not rolled out their version of Content ID or intellectual property protection because they're trying to make sure they can make it as good, if not better, than Google's product. So right now, what do you think in your roles, or if you were creating a new MCN type organization and technology was going to, I assume, be a core part of that, because of your roles in starting that, where do you think the greatest opportunity exists to work with these platforms on the technology and product side? And we can go by example. So we can, if we want to start with YouTube and where we see the opportunities are there, or if we want to just go into Facebook because we really don't know what's happening with Facebook. Some of us have been given glimpses, but we don't know. I'd be interested to see where you think, where you guys would go if you were calling all the shots. Mike, you want to start?
I'll go. I think in general, just experimenting more is the big thing that I try to push. You got the new platforms like Facebook, new as in video sense, and then YouTube is always changing how their discoverability works and how they're pushing things. And unlike the old, Hollywood mindset of you just kind of, go with your gut and put it out there, you can experiment more on these platforms. It's not easy always, but it's interesting to experiment with different descriptions and different thumbnails, and the best practice is just try things. You'll see some things won't work, some things will work. You got to be able to track them, and then some things won't work, and you'll find them to be counterintuitive, and then you can bring that to the network or the social platform itself and say, why didn't this work? And they're a tech company. They love to answer those questions. Sometimes they will say, there's a reason for that, and I'm not going to tell you. But otherwise, they can also say, try this, you're on the right track. And so just experimenting and just iterating on things as much as possible, getting creators that are interested in that process, having the tools to do that at a scale where you can actually track it and make sense. All of these are big things that we're trying to do and trying to push all the time.
So the role of technology within the MCN and the creator has always been one of, hey man, we're doing this deal. Oh yeah, here's the tech guy. Here's the tech guy. And what I'm hearing is that's not what it needs to be. There needs to be a level of technical literacy where you can experiment. You can't experiment on something if you don't know how to experiment. Am I right?
Yeah, I think I kind of try to view, we're not a tech company. We're a media company. We're a talent company. So I kind of try to view the tech behind it as just a constant, quiet thing to make everything better in the background. I always tell our team that we should be like NFL refs. If people are talking about us, it's probably because we screwed something up. And so, we're just trying to make sure when someone needs to have a question about the data is there. When a talent logs in, they need to be able to see what their estimated revenue is and understand that why it went up or why it went down and ways they can change that. And tracking this information, storing this information, and moving files around should just be seamless so that the talent can kind of do what they want. If they want that extra data, which we obviously try to push, that they like that, both internal and talent, the data is there. So that's kind of how I try to move tech in this media landscape.
Just to push one more on this thread, is that I have heard numerous times from people, why would I want to share with YouTube or Facebook something that maybe I'm figuring out with their system? Why wouldn't I want to until basically ask for forgiveness as opposed to asking for permission? Let's say if you realize that you're able to glean some information from an API that you didn't know, or your quota you thought was at something and it was up here. Why would you want to be collaborative and upfront and as opposed to not being? Besides for the normal thing of, is there retribution?
There is a gamesmanship available. These are, you're supposed to be on the same team, but they have things you don't want to do, getting more information, getting it more frequently. I think you've got to be upfront because they could just turn it off and they can just take it. So the good example recently is the Twitter follower API that they had put out forever that there was this little page you could hit, send it a URL, and it'll tell you how many tweets were in this URL. And they kept saying, don't use this, it's for our button. If you use it, we're gonna turn it off. We're not gonna ding you, but eventually it might go away. And it finally just went away about a week ago, and the internet like freaked out. Yeah. And so, yes, there's a communication level. Sometimes they don't care. Sometimes sometimes they'll tell you there's a perfectly good way to do this. Sometimes they'll say, I didn't realize you were doing it this way. We should just make this an official API. We've had that experience many times with YouTube. They've been great about that. But sure, there are some things back in the harder quota days. If you figured out some way to request that where your quota only went down 1 rather than 10, maybe I didn't put an email out right away about that. But there are, I think in general, talking with the platforms, especially the ones that are kind of just getting into this analytics sense, they want to know this information. They want to know what we know so that we can have our creators on their platform. And that communication will help you get access to maybe beta things in the future, or just be tighter with that organization, which can't hurt.
Shall we talk about Facebook for a moment?
Okay.
So I'd like to actually hear all three of yours feelings about, from your perspective, what the hell is going on with Facebook. I mean, it is, in the industry press, it is literally hysteria about the freebooting and the lack of visibility and the various split testing that's going on, that people, I saw this, screenshots of this is what I'm experiencing. I mean, I'm just like, can you guys just calm down, please, for a second? Because we're never going to get anywhere with Facebook unless do you have to be a hacker to be successful with Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, so what does that mean? From where you sit right now with Me Too, what does that mean?
That means that you exponentially grow by being a data-driven company rather than MCN.
Okay.
And
I don't know what that means.
It means that we're a tech company. We're a tech media company. We're not a traditional media business. If you are in that boat, that ship has already sailed.
Okay.
So now you're in a new era. Facebook controls the traffic on the internet. It's a walled garden. So there is a lot of hacking to do in order to stay on top. And hacking, not in the sense of being mischievous, but in a sense of really following a process of understanding what the audience is asking for and finding the voice that resonates with your audience, and you immediately see the results.
So that's a combination of understanding the audience who's on Facebook, is demanding something, but also understanding what Facebook's capabilities are and drive more of that to that audience. I mean, I've been in conversations where basically it's been said to me that you can become an overnight Instagram star if we want you to be, if you're doing something on Facebook that's interesting, because it's an ancillary, it's another company, but it's related. Now, I took that as just being, well, you work at Facebook, of course you're going to say that. But it seems like it's actually true, that if there is some traction to be gained with with content, that it then can be moved through the walled garden very effectively, the golden path through the walled garden, and you can reap lots of successes. Is that what you're meaning, or is it meaning that you take what Facebook is giving you in terms of the data, and then you're making decisions based upon that, and it's a trial and error? Or is it both?
It's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
But I can tell you that it works. It works, and without getting into too much of details, that's why we're here and where we're going to be successful. We're able to drive millions of views in a matter of minutes just by knowing which buttons to push. And that's the future of media.
I think the challenge for Facebook for Hollywood in particular is it seems counterintuitive to the way they usually do business. There's not just to build an audience on Facebook. Let's say it this way: build an audience on Facebook. You have to do things that you don't usually think would make sense. Sharing other people's content, sharing at certain frequency rates. Even if you didn't put out a video today, you need to make sure you post 5 times that day something just to keep that audience built. It can't just be sending out trailer after trailer after trailer after trailer and then the video. That won't work on Facebook. And so that is difficult, I think, for some companies to understand. And the other big issue is it's completely an algorithm. And if they want to change it, if they decide that, well, they did decide that they want to have video show up more, video is going to show up more. If they want to change it so that, certain kinds of videos, maybe videos that have closed captioning show up more, it will show up more. It's not like an SEO sense where they had a little more visibility. If they want to just shift things for a certain reason, it will be shifted. And so there's a little bit of trying to understand what Facebook wants in addition to also putting out the content and the kind of best practices for Facebook. So there's a lot of moving parts in there, and a lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense to a traditional content company. And I think that's a very good point, in that you have to be even more tech, to be more experimental, you have to be able to change and pivot more quickly, which tech helps, in this new Facebook video world.
I do a lot with Instagram, Facebook again, and what I do like about Instagram that they still have not made any crazy algorithms. Whereas if I have 10,000 followers, that my post will show up to the 10,000 followers if they're actively on it looking. Whereas if I have 10 million followers on Facebook, I don't know, I could have one like. You have no idea what is going to happen. So I can't predictably sell Facebook like I do Instagram to clients when I'm creating these branded campaigns, this interaction with influencers and brands. I can predictably, down to the very amount of comments and likes, know what they're going to do if they make posts on Instagram for the most part, because it's so predictable. Now I'm fearful that they'll change that because they want to take that audience and then make you pay for it even more to reach them, like they did on Facebook, on the actual Facebook app. So I don't know when that'll get changed or if it will at all. But right now Instagram tends to be the most engaging, one of the more engaging networks, because they kind of have it's the one-to-one rule. If you post it, your followers will see it. And it used to be, I don't know, back in the days in Facebook, it used to be like that, but you get one person and just take over your whole feed, and that's when they quickly killed that. But they haven't really throttled anything yet on Instagram. So,
Should third parties like multi-channel networks be fearful of Facebook? And let me structure that a little bit more. Google and YouTube they've always reached out, whether they tried buying third parties to try and help them produce better content and increase revenue, when I say better, more professionally produced content. Next New Networks, I think, was the first one of those. But Facebook is buying creative agencies, is buying technology companies, is buying platforms. And it seems as though there isn't a spirit of cooperation. There's a spirit of, we're gonna own it. And so that mentality, I think, would lead technologists and product people to have to try and think one step ahead.
Well, luckily, we, as in video, have someone ahead of us down that line in the news. Facebook is treating news organizations kind of like, I think the video will be in 6 months or a year, or whatever it is when they finally get that out. So it's been interesting to watch the news and the fast loading posts, I can't remember the actual name of it, and how they're putting, they're trying to get people to put their news directly onto Facebook rather than clicking off to a site and changing how the rev shares are for that. And so we've been watching the news and Facebook business very closely, because you got to figure it's going to be very similar to how things roll out for media. Right now on video, it's freebooting and a little bit of content ID and things like this. It's a little more Wild West. But I think as it solidifies, the evidence shows that they're gonna want things on their platform. They're gonna want it load locally, and they're gonna give you the rev share that they want to give you. And so No, I don't think they're going to be afraid necessarily, but it's certainly worth watching and understanding. But at the end of the day, it's their platform. It is a walled garden, and so there's some things they're going to work with you on, but if they don't want to, they don't have to. Same with changing the newsfeed. You know?
Right.
I mean, I think the MCN is only on YouTube. Like there's not another network that allows you to sit back and collect AdSense for your creators. My Instagram influencers, Vine influencers, Snapchat influencers, unless I'm doing something specific with them, I don't get to take cents off of their views. And I don't know if another network's going to go like YouTube did and create an MCN, but maybe. But I think all the MCNs are moving, knowing that they were once called MCNs, but they have to be multi-platform now. They have to represent talent on all networks, and it's a very different thing to represent talent on non-YouTube networks. It's very different because there is no money in it for the MCN when Vine stars go out there and create their content, unless that content is created in collaborations with Maker Studios or whoever their MCN. So it's a really interesting world. We'll see. I've heard talks that Vine might try to be an MCN. I've heard these talks, but I do know when Facebook was in last week, they came and talked to our creators specifically, and they're going to fly them up to headquarters to talk to them about this freebooting and all these problems, because they do not want to make those people too angry. Like, they don't care about them a lot, but they don't want to start off going the opposite way and making it so no creators want to exist or live on YouTube. And after the meeting, that most of them were actually really excited about now collaborating, wanting to move a lot of their stuff to Facebook. So I think they're going to figure it out. And I don't know where the MCN will really place in like technologically in that as much, but in trying to carve out revenue, other than doing these branded integrations and making sure that we have what they call a full 360 deal with the talent, where we represent them on anything they touch in the public, all social channels. So.
I mean, the difference is AdSense, right? That's what Google has that no one else has.
Yeah.
I think, to dovetail on that, I think the future of MCNs on those other platforms is helping with the distribution. We have a dashboard where you can log in and you want to send a video to Facebook, you click a button and boom, it's on Facebook. That kind of stuff. The branded content is obviously already bigger than AdSense, I would say, for probably most, if not all, the MCNs. And so, not having AdSense on some of these platforms is tricky, but that's really what designates the MCN, just getting views and turning that into a chunk of revenue. But I think there'll always be distribution plays and branded content, grouping partners together. Maybe this guy's too small to get a branded deal, but 5 of you together, that you could really get from a network that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. Mm.
So right now, entertainment companies are scrambling to become more technologically oriented. I guess you guys are an example of why you have jobs, right? And you have technology companies not really caring about the media. The media will always be there in their minds. I mean, granted, Facebook, like you said, with Facebook, BuzzFeed, New York Times are publishing natively on Facebook, right? Publishing natively on Apple's news app, as opposed to just on their own apps or websites. Are we at an inflection point where that kind of 90-10 that Hollywood has always been, where 10% carries the 90%, 10% of the views, 10% drives 90% of the revenue? Are we at an inflection point now where media companies are going to have to really take tech seriously? And do you think they'll ever, just experience and history will show you that media companies do not trust technology? And that seems to me that you're always going to have, some examples would be the BBC always seems to be developing their own player or solution. MLB, Major League Baseball, it's a sport, but I'll call it media, has been very successful, and so successful that now the National Hockey League uses their technological background. Are we going to see, do you think we're going to see entertainment companies really trying to become tech media companies, as Alex said? And if so, where do you think the biggest opportunities are? Or which companies have the biggest opportunity? The MCNs, you guys? Or is it still Viacom and Fox? Do you think they can make the transition?
I think that the Silicon Valley has stolen Hollywood by music, then Netflix video, and then there was this thing called user-generated content. So, Silicon Valley is taking that as well. So there's always going to be need for content creation, and I think that's what a lot of these companies specialize in. Just to be clear, there's a big difference when you jump from a Vine type of content into YouTube or longer formats, and there's always going to be the need for understanding what it takes to create good content. But in terms of the viewership, the control is now on the hand of technology, where the distribution channels are no longer just limited to cable or YouTube, for all that matters. It's expanding to moving away from SEO to more walled gardens. So I think we're going to see a lot of shift, and Hollywood is going to pay close attention to that if comes to losing more business.
I think the shift's already happening. I was just at a Variety Big Data conference a few weeks ago. I mean, that was the first one, admittedly, but a couple years ago, that would feel pretty weird to go to one of those. So I think that's, they're forced to do technology. I think if you're not using tech to distribute things, you're obviously not distributing in very many places. If you're not understanding all the analytics and the big data that comes in, it's negligent. Like you need to understand as much information about your business as possible, and the only way to really do that at scale is tech. And sure, there are some partners that some people use, but having some element of tech, understanding that is already top of mind on a lot of these companies. And then also I'll throw in security too, as Sony found out, is also then becoming kind of a secondary level of concern in tech. So I think it's already happening. Will it change from that 10% to 90%? That might widen a little bit with more distribution and different micro audiences you can find. I don't think it's going to widen that much. There's still going to be some people that are just really magnetic, whether it's on TV or a film screen or a laptop screen or your phone, and they're still going to carry a lot of it. But what I think is interesting, and this kind of dovetails back to the tech, that cycle of how long internet celebrity or just celebrity is big is going to speed up. And so you have to be churning your 90% to find out who's going to be in the new 10%. And that goes back to analytics, understanding what your audience likes, understanding the creator types you have. And so that's maybe a little slower going with tech, but I would say in media companies that shift is here. They are, if they don't already have a tech company, they're freaking out they don't have one. And I think that's a positive step. You got to get there, but the big companies have a lot of data and they don't know what to do with it.
So if each of you had a wish list of what you'd like to see from specific platforms right now who are hosting media at a massive amount of media, I would like to hear from each of you what you'd like to see from a tech or product standpoint within the next 12 to 24 months from each one of those platforms. Scott, can we start with you?
Yeah, I'm currently doing a Snapchat campaign, and we have to manually have creators screenshot and download and email us every single story, because there's no other way to do it. Every little Snapchat video they make, and that's for a massive campaign for a massive studio that we're doing this for. I would really like to have some help from Snapchat because it's being demanded. The brands want Snapchat. They know that's, if they're going for teens and 20-somethings, it is the most vibrant, like off the charts. It's used by everyone's on every phone. It's creeping younger and older in every way, and it's no longer just the nudity pics that it started out as. It's now a communication platform. There's no doubt about it, and I would love some help there because they give us nothing, absolutely nothing. And after that, I would love to I'd love to. We're actually doing this right now. Instagram's finally made their ad. You can buy ads in Instagram right now with Facebook Ad Manager, and so that's actually kind of opening up so we can get some more data. But I don't know anything about the audience, the demographics of these audiences, and really who they are, who their followers are. So just more stuff that I could tap into would be great. But and then I'd also like to see the live streaming stuff come on board a lot more. It was so interesting a year ago when Meerkat and Periscope came out, and it doesn't feel like it's going where I thought it was going to go, and I'm wondering what's going to happen there. Like, who's going to really figure out how to tell stories in a live format and stream it to these mobile apps? And there's a few cases, but it's nothing. I'm not seeing the demand yet from brands, and we have the ESPNs of the world. Why aren't they coming to us saying we need to be on Periscope? So I'm trying to watch that and see what's going to happen next on live streaming to mobile devices. So I think that's super interesting. And Twitch, you've got Facebook started doing live. Everyone's trying to do it. No one's figured out how to really make it engaging and more than just an app you keep on your phone, but not open. No one's opening it every day from my indications. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, APIs. I think if it's creator information, if it's how many views they're getting, how much money they're making, their demographics of their viewers, if it's available to the creator, then we should be able to pull it, or they should be able to pull it via an API, and rather than just opening and screenshotting an app. That's a broad one, but that's one that I feel is the biggest, right? Is that if your creator should be able to see it, we should be able to pull it, or they should be able to pull it. Anyway, they need to be able to pull it. They need to get that access to that data. Another big one, if I'm moonshotting here, would be standards. Some element of figuring out what the hell a view means between Facebook and YouTube and Snapchat and all these things would be a big one. Granted, do I think that's going to happen? No. But, what the hell? We'll throw it out. Views and viewership and all these kind of things, just basic standards would go a long way in understanding some of this stuff better.
I kind of like these challenges. I think that as painful as they are, it's a sign of changes as it's coming to the media. So I'm not expecting a magic wand to just show up and everything is mature, everybody's going to run this way. I think, we are going to exist because we're going to figure out these challenges, and that's fine.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, and I'd be happy to take some questions from you folks out there if you have any. So tell me your question, I'm going to repeat it, and then the panelists will answer it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. You're talking about the social platforms, but are you also kind of focusing on other kinds of distribution, like publishers, syndication, those things, to spread out the content? There's a lot of opportunities there.
Okay, so I don't think I understood what the question is. You're saying that besides the social platforms, there's other areas where you can distribute content?
You're talking about technological platforms, social platforms. There's also other opportunities to distribute your content. There's a lot of publishers, a lot of syndication networks, those things. How does that kind of influence, the MCNs and the strategies?
So I'll paraphrase and stop me. Should the MCNs look at independent publishers and other non-YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter type of distribution points?
If there's audience there, yeah, we're wanting to do that. We're working with distributing our stuff on like Verizon's new Go90 app. There's a lot of these new OTT type of opportunities that.
Lots of technical and product challenges with these new OTT.
Yeah, it's not that matured yet. Yeah, and it's actually not. It's not showing us numbers that really get us excited compared to some of the other places we're distributing, like the social network platforms. But if they're there and it can share easily and distribute easily, and it can help us get more reach for our programming and for everything we're doing, yeah, I know we're interested in that stuff. There's a lot of options in sifting through it and who's got traction, who's really built audience outside of those 5-6 platforms. That's interesting if there is somebody.
Is there anybody taking technological leadership of the non-social platforms that you guys have had experience with that's interesting to you?
I think like the social networks, And even more so, these guys are springing up so quickly that they just need to get out the door. That's a nice benefit for the MCNs in that we're able to distribute to these platforms more easily than random creator who's uploading it to 15 different things every time I post a video. That just doesn't scale. And so one of the nice things we're able to do is to push that out for them, give them best practices that we didn't even know any yet. Like I said, it's very early. We don't really know any best practices. But assuming at some point, we'll know. And helping push all those things out, I'm absolutely grouping those in with kind of pushing it to Facebook, but also pushing it to Go90, also pushing it to the Comcast play. All those I'm kind of grouping in as a distribution play, which is a big part of tech in the MCNs now.
Yeah.
If we don't have any other questions, I have one other question. Costs are something that I think would be important to when you're dealing with massive amounts of data. Is this when you guys are, if you have access to massive amounts of data, there would be costs having to store and move that data around. Is that something that concerns you guys right now? Any of you three? Are there any new technological solutions coming down from maybe the Akamai's of the world or anything like that, or it's not a concern?
As far as storing big data, the buzzword and all that kind of stuff, and then maybe the next step would be storing video, which we do some of, but people are putting to YouTube, and then we've got a good management on that. We don't need to store every bit of video out there. But big data analytics, I think, is something interesting. And actually, with cloud computing and everyone competing with each other, not really much of an issue right now. I mean, yeah, it's still a cost, and it can add up. But S3 storage on Amazon is very cheap from a couple years ago even. And then they're dropping their price when Google gets into the game, and Microsoft with Azure gets into the game. And so we're actually in a great spot right now for cloud computing and storage costs, in that it hasn't really been. The factor is getting it in. We're not really worried so much about what it's going to cost to get here. Getting it in and processing it is more important than worrying about storage costs at this point.
Well, I want to thank my panelists. Once again, Mike Flynn, CTO of Collective Digital Studios, Scott Paul, VP of Product from Maker Studios, and Alex Mastouf, excuse me, of Me Too. And thank you, audience, and have a great rest of your conference.